So I'm Representative Stephanie Sawyer Clayton. I represent the area from Metcalf to State Line, 103rd to, or 83rd to 103rd, unless you're east of Mission, and then it's Somerset just south to 95th. So just think Knoll Hills, Meadowbrook, Ranch Mart, and you would be in that area. I have been serving the legislature. I am in my 14th year of service. Very happy to still be here. And so I serve on the Federal and State Affairs Committee. I am also the ranking minority member on the Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development Committee, and I serve on the Tax Committee. My two big pieces of news for this month are that in the Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development Committee, we worked on the Sports Authority bill for the Chiefs. The big concern that I have there, it did pass out of committee. It's not going to be up on the floor tomorrow, but I assume sometime this week. And the big concern that I have with that is representation. So right now, it's a 9-member board, and the only residency requirement is that you live in the state of Kansas. The people who are in charge of appointing people to the board are, the governor gets one appointee. They get the shortest term because obviously, since we'll have a new governor, whoever it may be, because Governor Kelly is term limited. So their appointee lasts the least amount of time. The chiefs get to appoint someone to be on that board, and their appointee lasts the longest. It's a 4-year term. And then the other people who get to appoint someone are Speaker of the House, Senate President, Senate Majority Leader, House Majority Leader, House Minority Leader, and House and Senate Minority Leader. So it could potentially be, weighted heavily on one side of the aisle. And my big concern is not really so much on which side of the aisle gets to appoint people, but the fact that we could have a sports authority board that consists entirely of people who do not live in Wyandotte or Johnson County or in the taxing jurisdiction, so that making decisions about facilities that are not in their area. If this were going to be the Wichita Chiefs, they would never tolerate this. And so because the bill hasn't reached the floor yet, and even though once it does, it'll probably go into the conference committee process, and I'm the member of the conference committee on commerce, since I'm the ranking minority member on that, then we can stay tuned for the next couple of weeks for a lot of things potentially changing with that. I still hope we can have a floor amendment that will make the mayor of Olathe, where the practice facility will go, and the mayor of Wyandotte's unified government, where the stadium will go, full voting members of that board. Right now, they are non-voting ex officio members because apparently leadership is cranky with Wyandotte County, and so are the chiefs. But they're literally having it there, so I don't know. So we'll just sort of see the way that it was. I was unable to support that coming out of committee. We also have a lot of news as far as tax is concerned, because I'm the only person on commerce and tax, that's all I'm talking about. But as far as tax is concerned, we have a lot of potential property tax bills that have been kind of going through in various iterations. The House position was initially something that everyone here found tolerable because the cities of Overland Park and Leawood were okay with it. Some of the smaller Northeast Johnson County cities were not okay. That would have allowed for citizens to bring a protest petition if they disagreed with, say, some of the city budgets or mill levies. And initially, the protest petition would have been 10% of the people who voted in the last presidential election, but then on the floor, it got changed to 5% of the people who voted in the last Secretary of State's election, which of course narrows the number. And then when it got to the Senate, I think they dropped it to 3%. And so that bill is effectively dead because now a lot of the House members, including our House tax chair, no longer like it. The Senate position, believe it or not, is actually even worse because you might have seen this where, we're getting our valuations this time of year and it's frightening, right? The valuations on my house went up $42,900 in 1 year. I'm dealing on one income here. I'm sure that my neighborhood is lovely, but I do not plan on selling my house. I'm locked in at 3%. I'm leaving that house in a body bag. Like, I am not selling it. But, the taxes are going up because of these valuations. If anyone is interested in how to challenge these, I do plan on challenging mine because, look, it's a lovely home. It is not worth that much. It just can't possibly be. So we'll see how it goes. But if anyone wants to follow me on my journey, or if anyone wants help on your challenging journeys, let me know. But in any case, the Senate plan would lock those valuations in at 3%. It would cap them. Now, that sounds nice. Sounds nice for someone like me who, again, isn't going to leave unless I die. But most normal people do sell their homes and do move around. So it discourages any kind of movement. And it also doesn't really cut your taxes. It results in mill levy increases in local government. So it says that it does. And it would be a constitutional amendment that would go on the ballot in November. It was originally set to go on in August, but I actually got an amendment on in committee that moved it to November. But we ended up not really moving that bill forward. We killed it on a general orders vote, which means it's still sitting in the committee of the whole. It just has not advanced to final action. So there are other things tax-wise that are still in the works, that are things that it's like, okay, I like this, I don't hate that. So we have to let our House tax chair and our House tax minority ranking minority member and other folks sort of negotiate these. So stay tuned. The session is set to end for first adjournment on basically on the 27th of March. So that will be, we call it drop dead day when we're in their house. That's just basically when all bills basically are dead. But we will not have sine die, that is, the formal end of session, the same day as first adjournment, because they couldn't come to a reconciled version of the budget. So the governor will likely line item some things. So that means we will come back for a short veto session, just 2 days on the 8th and 9th. So that is all I have to say, unless we have questions. Sorry, I talked a lot, but there was a lot to bring up. So, who's next?
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Representative Heather Meyer. I represent House District 29. We are in it right now. That is essentially 95th to 135th between Metcalf and 69 Highway, with a few little cutouts here and there, thanks to redistricting. I've been serving, this is my 5th session now, and I'm currently ranking on federal and state affairs. I also serve on House Health and Human Services, as well as House Elections and House Insurance. We've had a really busy year in all of those committees, and elections has been a very interesting one. So I don't know if y'all know this, but the chair of House Elections is actually, he filed to run for Secretary of State on the Republican ticket. He's essentially been using his chair position to push through some really terrible legislation and kind of using it to stump for his upcoming election and the primary specifically. So it's been a pretty tumultuous committee, but I am lucky to have some great colleagues who serve with me on there, and we keep him on his toes, and sometimes we burn it down. Like this week, for instance, I would like to mention, so typically I don't like to behave like this in committees. It's professionalism is really important, and making sure that we all have conversations with each other, no matter how heated they get, is important. However, the chair of the committee, Pat Proctor, this week went on a rant unprompted about George Soros and was using a lot of anti-Semitic dog whistles. I immediately called him out for that in committee. Then he doubled down and kept coming back with how it was somehow not anti-Semitic. So I stood up and walked out and kind of made a scene about it. And then a couple of my colleagues, Representative Alexis Simmons from Topeka and Representative Brooklyn Mosley from Lawrence, joined me in walking out in protest as well. Because what we will not do is stand for anti-Semitism or discrimination, especially coming from the chair of a committee who gets to decide who votes and who doesn't. You know what I mean? So, thank you. So, it can get pretty hairy out there sometimes. We don't like that to happen, but you have to stand up for the people you represent, for the people you care about, and that's our job, and that's what we did. So that was a wild committee this week. I do encourage you all to tune into the YouTube videos sometime. It gets pretty fiery in there, and you can see us fighting pretty hard to protect the voting rights of everyone in the state. Federal and state affairs has been a very interesting committee this year. I had served on it previously, and then when Representative Silas Miller moved to the Senate, I took over his position as ranking. And I had formerly been a ranking on a different committee, so this wasn't too new for me. But the number of bills that we get through this committee is pretty wild. We've been working on trying to stop some pretty terrible legislation, most notably about how ICE officials operate in the state of Kansas. We've got another one coming up tomorrow that we're going to be hearing as well. And then, a few bills regarding any number of Fed and state affairs things. But we had one about the App Store bill, which was pretty contentious, that we actually worked last week. And that one was basically to broadly set age restrictions and require data to be sent over to the App Store. So there was a lot of data privacy issues going on with it. And so we voted to table that bill. Hopefully it won't come back up, but we'll see how that goes. So that committee's been pretty wild, but pretty good. The chair is pretty easy to work with, and so we get good things done in that committee as well. I do want to say I had my very first bill hearing after 5 years last week. I've been working on a bill called the Insulin Affordability Act since I got to the legislature. And I was finally granted an informational hearing, which is a step in the right direction. Incrementalism is how things go out there. And it was really good. It was supported, it was supported by both sides of the aisle. And one of our Republican colleagues, Angela Steens, who's from this neck of the woods, actually testified in favor of the bill and gave some really great testimony on my behalf and on behalf of making sure that we can cap insulin costs for people across the state. And also included in that was capping the cost of testing supplies for glucose monitoring. So pretty proud about that. I think it looks like it would get some great traction. So provided I'm reelected, fingers crossed, working hard, I will reintroduce it again next year, and we will get that moving forward. Health and Human Services, we've had a lot of scope of practice bills this year. So we've just kind of been working through those. Not a lot of crazy stuff going on over there. It's not, I wouldn't say it's been a light committee, but it's not filled with abortion bills this year. So that's nice. But anyway, so that's kind of what I've been up to. Sorry I haven't been to a town hall recently. I've had a lot of stuff going on personally, so I was glad that I could finally make it out to this one, and I will keep coming back like I did last time. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Linda Featherston. I represent the 16th district. So we start up at the mall, go down through the community college, and then down to 129th Street, the KU Edwards campus. I'm the ranking member on local government, which is generally a pretty nice bipartisan committee. My theme for that committee this year, though, has been either I have lost my mind or the committee has lost its mind. And I think it's the committee. We've just had some bills that I didn't feel like we got the full story behind them, or there was just things seemed sneaky, and I'm a mom, so when things seem sneaky, I just oppose them. Just when you dig a little further and you find one more thing and one more thing, I'm like, you know what? No, not going to do it. So the Water Committee is, I think, the best committee in Topeka. All the members are really focused on no politics, just finding ways to secure our water for generations to come. We do have a bill, I think we will work on Tuesday, that's the last day, that is kind of restructuring, it's House Bill 2302 from a couple years ago, which was the landmark bipartisan bill that set up kind of how we're funding water right now in all of our policies. It was a huge step forward. Like, we took a picture as a committee when it passed, and I think when it passed on the floor, everybody stood up and cheered, which never happens, mostly because it's not allowed. But yeah, there seems to be some tension between a senator from Central Kansas and the water office. So we'll see how that works out. Lindsey Vaughn is our ranking member on that, and I know she's working hard to get some compromises going. I'm a ranking member on agriculture, which has mostly been okay. I do think we are going to have a bill that's going to save kittens and puppies. So that was nice. Somebody tried to ruin it, but we managed to head that off. So right now, if somebody drops off or if a stray is found for 3 days, it has to stay in the shelter. Hopefully that its owner will come. But if that's a box of kittens that somebody has dropped off without its mother, they're not coming back for it, first of all. And second of all, they need around the clock every 2-hour feedings, which shelters cannot do. They don't have the staff. And so they want to be able to put those puppies and kittens into foster homes where they can feed them every 2 hours round the clock. So I feel modestly confident that we'll get across the floor without too much nonsense. Education committee. I used to say that Mari-Lynn served on the Cuckoo Crazy K-12 budget committee, but we, I believe, have taken over that role this year. I feel like I've spent my entire session fighting vouchers and cell phone bans, and it's exhausting. I guess on the I'll just say it's cell phone ban because that's the hottest topic we have going right now. It's headed to the governor's desk. The Senate bill is far worse than ours was. And it's not that, like, I am all for putting away your cell phone, especially for kids in class. Like, you need to learn to function as a regular person and not be on your phone all day. But, you know, the 3 districts I represent, Blue Valley, Olathe, and Shawnee Mission, they all have policies that are all working. I was just out at the symphony with a friend last night who subs. So if kids are going to be bad, it's going to be for the sub. And she said she was up at Shawnee Mission North, no problems. If a kid happened to get their phone out of the bag, she'd just say, put your phone away, no problems. So we have policies, and this is just a slippery slope. If the legislature is going to start dictating this, then the next thing you know, we're going to have Eddie Eagle, which is the NRA's ineffective gun safety curriculum. Then we're going to have, Prager University teaching history and Lord knows what else. And then we're not going to have science. You might remember those happy days when the State Board of Ed went over the edge and we didn't have evolution for a while. So we just need to hold firm and we'll see what the governor does. She's very much in favor of the bill, what we've heard, and that's her issue, not mine. So the thing that is currently probably worrying me most in that committee is Senate Bill 387, which I am going to say on the floor went from bad to bonkers in under an hour, which is probably a new record for us. It started out bad, where every kid who receives a free reduced price lunch, their family would have to, the Department of Ed would have to verify their income. The federal law says you are to check 3% of those, or 3,000, which is the smaller number. That is the law. So if you're not going to follow the law, you are now in violation, and there's $250 million of food money gone. So that was bad. Then my committee, in all its wisdom, decided that the way we would verify that is you should turn in your 1040. So now you, as a low-income parent, will have to fill out the free meal or reduced price meal form. Your school will have to cross their fingers and hope you fill out the at-risk funding form, because that's based on free meals and then other factors. But that is a huge amount of money that goes to our schools that need that extra funding to help kids who need more reading help, more everything help. And then third, I would have to round up my 1040 and I guess just leave it on somebody's desk. And Department of Ed made it clear they cannot go to Department of Revenue and just get this information. They do not have that access. And also your 1040 is not protected by regular education privacy laws. So this is just a disaster waiting to happen. Can you imagine a folder for 1040 sitting on somebody's desk, and then there's a fire alarm, and now we have 1040s everywhere. So, I mean, it's terrible. And, they're going to say they've put in the bill that the state will cover the funds that it would take to make all reduced price lunches free. And that was stuck in the bill, but there is no funding for that. And we've defeated it on the floor. They have defeated it on the floor at least once or twice. So the House is not going to fund it. And the Senate isn't even going to fund mental health in schools, so they are certainly not going to be feeding children. So when you get a postcard that says we all voted against feeding poor children, there's a lot more behind it, because I would say there's zero chance they will put that money in the budget. So they can put it in that terrible bill all they want, but all it's going to do is just beats up on people who already have enough things to worry about. And we found during the pandemic, when everybody got free meals, there was a 20% reduction in families filling out those risk forms, because they have enough going on. They don't need to. But then you lose all this funding. And if the two weren't tied, that's another discussion. But under our current formula, they are tied. And the funding formula, which I'm sure Representative Poskins will talk about, is up next year. We'll have to figure something out. But at this point, it's really sad, because I think feeding kids is a priority for all of us. And we're just being backed into a wall. We can further defund schools, take away extra help from kids, or we can vote for feeding them, but we know the money's not there. So, the money is there for other things. They will not put it for food. So, I should have something positive to say, but I don't think I do at this time.
Oh, well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to just start before diving right in to issues. And I want to tell you how grateful I am that you are all here today. And I want to tell you that everybody in the Senate Aid and Friends, we come out on a monthly basis. We put information out about our town hall on social media. I put it out on Twitter, for heaven's sakes, like the whole world can see that it's there, okay? I put it in my newsletters. We talk about it when, like, we were at Second Saturday for the Johnson County Dems. We put it out there all of the time that we are here to speak to you, our constituents, and we don't have any qualifications for whom we let into the room. You can agree with us, you can disagree with us, you are all welcome here. And I would like to encourage you to look at Sheila Alber's Kansas City Star opinion piece about her representative, who is the majority leader, Chris Croft. And Sheila Albers is a fabulous career educator. She was the principal at Harmony Middle School, where all 7 of my kids went. So I've known Sheila for a very long time. And she saw some post about Chris Croft having a coffee with Croft, and wanted to know how to find out about them, because he doesn't put them on social media. He doesn't put them in his newsletters. So she emailed his assistant and was told that only specific people get invitations if they are thoughtful and well-versed on the issues. And I would really encourage you to get a hold of that opinion piece. And I think it's our duty to make sure that people know about that. Every single House member is up for re-election in 2026, and I'd like to see people who will not publicly meet their constituents go. And we can use all the help that we could get for that. So that is so important. So I appreciate every single person who's here. And sometimes we overflow the room and sometimes we don't. It doesn't matter to us. We have scheduled a time to be in front of you and answer your questions, no matter how thoughtful or well-versed or in alignment with our particular votes or values you might be. So that is the first thing I want to say. And so then I'll go back. I'm Mari-Lynn Poskins, Kansas House District 20, Leawood and Overland Park. Education is one of my very top issues, so it's easiest for me to explain my district from attendance areas. I've got Shawnee Mission South and Blue Valley North. I'm 95th to 135th state line over to Mission, narrows 103rd to 127th with a couple of little cutouts. As well in redistricting. I'm so honored to be trusted with this work at this time in our history. This is my 6th session. I have filed for re-election in 2026, and if you all approve my job, I will be back to do it as long as you'll have me. So very, very honored, like I said, to be trusted with this work at this time. I serve on Featherston State with both Representative Meyer and Story Clayton. I'm also on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, where we have, and these two are my rankings, and they are amazing, you guys, keeping up with all of the things that happen and making sure we kind of understand what's in bills, and I'm going to talk about that very specifically in a second here. I also serve on the K-12 Budget Committee. That is my number one issue. I want to make sure that the schools that I came to Kansas for are the kind of schools and outstanding, excellent education experience for my children and my grandchildren and everybody else in the state of Kansas. I also this year got onto the Government Oversight Committee, which I have renamed the Christy Williams Cray Cray Show. It is something else. Wow. I had been on K-12 with her all of the time that I was on K-12, and I was kind of glad not to have to hear her anymore, but I agreed to do the Friday committee, and it is something else. So one of the things I'm going to back up and before I start talking about K-12 budget, because that is a very, very important issue, particularly with the 2026 elections for every House member coming up. One of the things that I want to talk about is in our K-12 budget committee meeting last Thursday, after beating up on school districts and not funding special education for 15 years in a row, which is an incredible drain on what we call fully funded schools, okay? So I'll get to that in a minute. And by the way, this handout is available on that podium up there, and it is what I handed out at the Blue Valley School Board meeting on Monday, March 9th, when there was discussion about cutting fifth grade strings because of budget problems in our Blue Valley schools. And my new thing that I do on every printed piece is put a QR code on it. So everything that's linked on this page can come up on your phone, and you can find my source documentation, because I am the facts and receipts girl. I hardly say anything unless I can back it up with a fact and receipt. So one of the disturbing things that I've been seeing quite a bit, and just saw last Thursday in our K-12 budget meeting, are people who do not, okay, there's only two options. They are lying or they are misinformed. And we are not allowed to speak to people's motives, so I don't know what their motive is. I don't know if they're lying or they're misinformed, but they're one or the other, and I'm here to put these out in the public so that people will know. At our K-12 meeting on Thursday, where we had just voted on the cell phone bill the day before on Wednesday, we have a meeting at the end of close to the end of every session, where we invite school board members from all across the state for a conversation with their K-12 committee. And, you know, the chair cut off K-12 special ed funding pretty quickly, and like, let's move into other questions that we have. And the cell phone ban was one of them. And so the school board members really pointed out the fact that at least 200 districts out of about 286 already had cell phone bans in their districts that were voted on by the duly elected school board members. Remember, I'm elected, they're elected. And it's on the GOP platform that the closest unit of government to the issue is the best unit of government to make those decisions. And so they were explaining the problems that they were having with the change of the cell phone bill. Cell phone ban, most of them had something in their district already. And so this new language about inaccessible means that they're going to have to purchase things, buy have a room with lockers. They're going to have to use staff time to check people in and out. I'm a mom of 7 kids, and I'm thinking about drop off and pickup time if every child that has a cell phone has to check it in, check it out, blah, blah, blah. So those were the things that we were quite aware of beforehand. And I will tell you that there was a 27-year veteran school board member, and his name is actually Rod Stewart, that's his name, from Washington County in western Kansas, who brought up, what's that? Oh, is it straight above us? I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you. I moved here from Florida. Thank you. Thank you. Anyway, Washington County, not Johnson County, not Sedgwick, not Lawrence, okay? And a 27-year veteran. And he was telling the committee that now they're going to have to redo their entire cell phone policy. And one of the real drawbacks is they had actually adjusted their cell phone policy to allow students to bring their personal laptops that they could access during a study hall, because they were not near to like Johnson County Community College like our kids might be. And so their options to pursue dual credit in high school was only through online coursework. And the Chromebooks, they're a one-to-one Chromebook district, cannot access an outside website like the community college, period, end of story. So he was explaining this, and Representative Megan Steele just hopped right on and said, sir, this bill only includes mobile phones. It is only cell phones. It does not include devices. And there is a Senate bill that includes devices, personal devices, and she was rude, ended up saying, look it up. It's H sub for $22.99, and maybe read the bills before you come and complain to our committee. And he said, well, which one is the one that passed? Because the one that was sent to me that my representative answered me about was that one. And she was rude and said it didn't include it. And the chair, Jason Getz, of the K-12 committee, who invited these people who should be more informed than somebody who does not sit on any sort of education committee, and nodded his head, yeah, it's HB sub for $22.99. They were both wrong about the contents of the bill they had voted on yesterday and were rude to school board members that they invited to committee. The chair recognized Leah Flyer from KASB to say, in fact, here's where it says it does include personal devices. That's appalling. It's unacceptable. And keep your eye on my social media because I've got my interns cutting and pasting that. As well, Representative McNorton is a school board member in Seaman School District, and he was waxing poetically about what a great bill it was and said it did something and it had certain provisions where, the reviser had, and he's like, it's not in the bill. They voted on it yesterday and invited these folks and were rude to them and were completely uninformed. I know that most of you have heard my whole big rant about special education funding and how when we have legislators who run on, I worked with Governor Kelly to fully fund our schools, and I've explained multiple times, and most of you probably understand this, that is one part of our education funding. And yes, we have fully funded the general education formula, but not because anybody's been sweetly working with the governor to make it happen, because the Kansas Supreme Court retained jurisdiction and they had absolutely no choice. What they have had a choice on is KSA 72-3422, our special education funding formula, which says we will fund special education at 92% of excess costs. Has not been done since 2011 and is now down to about 60-some%. And if you know what happened in 2011, it's that both chambers got a supermajority. So it is clear that we cannot trust Republicans to fund our schools. Representative Lauren Bohai, who is in, House District 14 or 15, it's so close, 14. It's Olathe, was at a League of Women Voters forum, thank you, House 15, that's really important because we have a fabulous candidate who can take that seat back and won't lie about special education funding. It was public at the Johnson County Library in Gardner, and she stated, and by the way, about special education funding, our governor says she wants to fund it. She said that at the State of the State address, but she never includes it in her budget. And you guys, for as long as I've been there, it has been, so I have a post coming where she is lying, and it is verifiably, demonstrably false. Every year, the governor has had a plan for fully funding special education. So I think that is incredibly important for you guys to understand that there are legislators out there who are one of two things, lying or misinformed, and neither of them are acceptable. So thank you all for being here, and we'll leave it for questions. Please pick one of these up. It also includes what the impact in our Johnson County schools of underfunding special education are. There are links to everything, including advertisements of Kelly Warren and Carl Turner lying about working with governor to fully fund our schools. So every single thing on here is linked if you'll pull it up on your phone. And with that, I'm going to hand it back for questions and introduction. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Could you clarify special education funding? How much of the special education funding is our legislature paying, and what the requirement about 92%, as we.
Right, so the requirement is 92%, and it's always a little difficult to figure out exactly where you're at. Linda, we're at 62, 64% right now?
And dropping.
And dropping quickly. We're about $200 million short. And this year, and the governor, by the way, asked for $50 million in her budget that Lauren Bohai says doesn't exist. asked for 50. The House position right now is 10 million. The Senate is 5 million, and that will not keep us even in any way, shape, or form. We had amendments, and that's on the sheet, on the House to add 40 million to the 10 to get us to the 50. That would be the governor's budget recommendation, and it failed. We had another one that would add 14 million that would bring it to even, and that also failed. And the interesting thing about the budget amendments, particularly the 14, and the 40 is a little complicated, but the 14 million would not have triggered maintenance of effort, which would mean that the legislature would have to put that in every year. So that should have passed easily. And I forgot to mention that the K-12 formula that is constitutional, has been through decades of lawsuits, is up for, it expires in 2027. And any responsible legislator who knows that it's expiring in 2027 would have a formula out in 2026, would it not? So that our districts can plan and understand what is going to happen. That will not happen. Well, I don't know. Maybe they have a secret plan. There's been no evidence of any plan that will be proposed in 2026, leaving a 2027 session to figure out what the funding is going to be on July 1st of 2027. Irresponsible, unacceptable. And I will tell you one of the reasons why, and we've got that elect our Supreme Court justices on in October. That's so that nobody ever has to tell them they have to fund anything again. The special education is not part of that lawsuit, so they have not been told to do it. And what have they done for 15 years? Gone from 95% in 2011, that's on my little sheet over here, down to about 62, 64% this year.
And it's, you're $200 million
short. We are $200 million short. And in Johnson County, and I apologize, you guys, if it's taking up too much time. In Johnson County, we have 6 school districts. We are 60 million short amongst those. And the net effect of that is we have what's called state-based aid. That's what comes of the formula that everybody has agreed to finance, and that's at about $5,300. And the amount of money that has to be transferred over to special education funding, because every single IEP and every single service in every IEP must be paid for. It doesn't matter what the state gives you. First, IEP, because it's federally required to provide those services. So when Johnson County is unfunded $60 million, they have to transfer other money to the special education budget first. And the net effect on that on our state-based aid or fully funding our schools is 26%. So if your general education student gets $5,300, it takes off about $1,400 of everything they get. Why are we talking about dropping 5th grade strings in Blue Valley schools? And that affects everybody. So, thank you.
Stephanie, you mentioned that you'd seen some property tax proposals that you thought were good or had been floating around, and
Yes.
I misunderstood. So I'm kind of interested in what those proposals are and what they do.
Normally, I would say what it is, but it is so behind the scenes in negotiation and so dangerous that it might end up failing. You'll find out what it is when we vote for it, because we might not get the opportunity to. I realize that sounds sketch and secretive, but that is how precarious it is. But it will be a constitutional amendment, so it will be the opportunity for people to vote, and it will not have an adverse effect on local government. So that much I can say.
Do you talk about your meeting yesterday or something?
Oh, yes, I can talk about, yeah, and so this is, yes. So I did run, normally, I don't like the concept of what we would call a gut and go amendment, which strips the contents of the bill and inserts contents of another similar bill. But I actually ran 2 gut and go amendments, one in committee and one on the floor, that would have gutted the contents of the bill that capped valuations at 3%. And instead inserted the contents of a constitutional amendment, again, something that would have gone to the vote of the people, that would have dropped the assessed valuation for residential properties, which is currently at 11.5%, would have dropped that down to 9%. And so it's funny because, there were people who would say, well, what about what this would do to commercial? And I'm all like, Okay, it's not like commercial property tax hasn't gotten tons of breaks over the years, not to mention the fact that business owners and businesses in general have gotten a number of tax breaks. I think we all know who isn't getting the tax breaks, and it's the normal individuals like you and me. So I did run that amendment. It was not successful either in committee or on the floor, which is a shame. But this other one that might come up is different than the one that I ran. So again, I think that a lot of us really do want to bring some kind of property tax relief. The big issue is that, sometimes people on the other side of the aisle, they'll see a problem and think, what is the most evil way that I could use to solve this problem? That doesn't actually solve the problem, because if we're cutting your state property taxes and your taxes are going up somewhere else, that's not a tax cut. That's a campaign promise that isn't true. And we don't like to make those, I certainly don't. So, so that's kind of what we're looking at there. Other questions?
We keep hearing this $10.50 add-on to each prescription, which would be devastating for people that have chronic conditions and are on 6 or 8 meds. Where is it?
So I would actually like to talk about that a bit, and I'm glad you brought it up. People are making that $10.50 charge sound like a much bigger deal. This is actually, and you are welcome to disagree with me, that's fine. But I think it's really necessary so that we can start addressing the issues with PBMs in general. And this, I'm sorry, pharmaceutical benefit management, right? Pharmacy benefit, yeah, okay, PBM.
She knows what they do.
I know what they do, and I dislike them a lot. But so basically, the PBMs, having them involved in the pricing and everything like that with our medications is a really big issue. This is not a pill tax, and from what I can tell after looking into this bill quite a bit, this should not be passed down to the consumer. Now, will it be? I'm not sure. But I would say that the way that the bill is structured would not make that pass down to the consumer, unless, however, the PBMs continue to be evil and did that in order to, they don't want this bill. They don't want more regulations. They don't want to have to be accountable for their overpricing. They don't really want to have to work with consumers in order to be able to make sure that you can afford your medications. So I know that that's kind of like, I'm just trying to do it more up in the, I don't want to get into the weeds on it because it is so in the weeds. But I do not believe that this is a bad thing. I know that it sounds shocking on the surface, but it's not. The PBMs are going to be the ones responsible for this charge. And they should not be passing that on to the consumer. We already pay enough for what they do. And they price gouge, and it's a big scheme. And so what this bill does actually is try to protect the consumer. So I would say I am happy to get you more information about what that $10.50 charge does and how that actually operates. It's a little too in the weeds to talk about right now. It would take me like an hour, but. Be careful where you get your information from on that, because it's being billed as a pill tax, but it's really not. It's we are going after the PBMs and making sure that they are held accountable for what they do. Yeah.
I will include Insurance Commissioner Vicki Schmidt had an editorial in the Star that really explained it. These PBMs are forcing mom and pop pharmacies out of business. It's basically their middleman, and they're forcing you to go through their market where they're getting a big discount and then kicking it back to themselves. And I've been hearing about this on rural issues for years. Like, small towns are losing their pharmacies. We're losing pharmacies. And, I always think, who's keeping track of your meds conflicting? It's your pharmacist. Pharmacists are incredibly well-versed, smart people. They know what they're doing. And these PBMs, I think the best way to think about it is, when did a middleman ever make anything cheaper? But the insurance commissioner did a really thorough article. it's on my Facebook page, and I think anybody can get to it, but if you somehow can't get through a star link, go through your Johnson County Library app, and you can access the star for free, which probably the star doesn't want me to tell you that. It might also be important to note, my friend with the receipts, the people who have opposed this sell insurance. So they stand to profit. I would say that's a good assumption from this, and he has not yet had the opportunity to vote against it, but a certain insurance commissioner candidate, who's now the Speaker of the House, also sells insurance. So this is a great day to look up Dinah Sykes for Kansas insurance commissioner, who does not sell insurance and would not be profiting from the businesses that she is supposed to regulate. There. Money words.
What's likely to happen with voter access at this point?
Which aspect of voter access are you?
All of the restrictions that are moving around.
Yeah.
And likely to traction.
Well, hope not. So we in the elections committee have been doing our damnedest to stop these horrible bills from coming out. Unfortunately, there's only 4 of us Democrats on that committee, so we don't have a lot of power to stop the bills in the committee. However, most of these awful bills are not being pulled above the line for a vote right now. I cannot speak to how the speaker chooses to pull bills above the line, and I don't want to say anything publicly that might encourage him to do so. But I'm very hopeful that most of these do not get brought up either in conference or on the floor. We're doing our best to work with our colleagues from the other side of the aisle to put pressure on them, to put pressure on their leadership to keep these bills from coming up. I think, frankly, there is a lot of folks are really on the other side of the aisle are very upset with the way that the elections committee has been operating this year, and as I said earlier, how the chair is using it to stump for his candidacy for Secretary of State. And so that right there alone, I think, is helping stop some of these bills coming up, because they are so irritated, because they've got another, there's another Republican legislator in the House who is also running for Secretary of State, and he is not doing that. So there's kind of this back and forth on their side of the aisle, and this pressure that they're each putting on each other, and it's playing out in really weird ways with elections bills, but hopefully those weird ways benefit us, and we can continue to keep those from coming above the line. But definitely keep your eye on it. There are a lot of bills dealing with citizens and non-citizens voting. They tried to basically get I want to say like a star on your license or something. It's a way to identify who is a non-citizen and who's not. A bunch of other really scary stuff going on in that committee for sure. But again, we've been trying to stop it, and the back and forth within their own caucus is helping us. So.
Do you think most Kansans realize that region just wants to be foreign and bombed? Do you think they don't know that?
I don't think they know that. I don't, and I think it's hard to keep track of everything. I have a hard time keeping track of what's going on in my own committees when they push stuff through this quickly, then especially with such a shortened session. And elections committee only meets 2 days a week, sometimes. We had over 22 bills come through that committee already. And when we looked at how many bills we were going to have to hear and work, we were like, how in the world is this going to happen? And they really have not been, we don't even have enough time to really dig into them in committee, right? And they are wrought with so many issues. So when we're working the bills, they end up having to bring amendment after amendment after amendment after amendment just to clean up the messy bills that they have. And I said, frankly, I would be embarrassed if I introduced legislation like that and it had to be torn apart like that and rebuilt in committee. Now, sometimes, of course, it makes sense to have to make amendments and you do things like that for compromise, but these are just messy and very short-sighted. And it's unfortunate that people, can't see that, but it's hard to keep track. How do you even do that? We try to get the word out, but good Lord, These ones, it's just hard, and they're pushing them through like that on purpose. Yeah. Anyone else? Oh, yeah.
Thanks. So some of you did mention like cell phone bans as well as age requirements for app stores. I know there's also a bill for I think it's like banning social media for anyone under the age of 16. And personally, I need to use my phone in the app store to like work and do my job. A lot of other people do that, and we don't really want to give our information over, like our driver's license, to a private corporation. So, could you please explain a bit about if those bills did come to pass, how they would be enforced?
I don't even know how to explain how they would be enforced, and that's kind of the issue. And that's what we've been talking to them about. Aside from the data privacy issues, the enforcement on this is just absolutely ridiculous, and how much it would cost and everything. I don't know. Do you want to get more into the weeds on this one?
I mean, a little bit. The cell phone bill is, basically, unless the governor somehow miraculously changes her mind, which I don't think she will. She said in her State of the State address, just bring this to my desk. And it's like, girl, what? But okay, whatever. So that I don't understand. But as far as, I do not think there will be movement on the banning social media for anyone over 16, just because you're lucky we are running out of time this session. So, so time is on your side in this regard. And then as far as the App Store bill is concerned, we did table that in Fed and State Affairs Committee, but it was a very close vote. And we are, I'm already starting to get texts from advocates in favor of the bill asking that it be brought back. So the App Store age verification thing is an issue. It's one of the things where I think a lot of, I oppose that bill, but I want to make that clear. But I think a lot of old folks like myself don't understand how often youth have to use their phones in order to do their jobs. I think that there's this misaligned belief that, everyone on there is just, messing around or, doing something that would lead to demise in their mental health. Business expects us to have a computer in our hand 24/7 where we can access things. Even I was just like, texting on my phone now because I'm trying to organize doggy daycare and stuff for this week. So it's, so I think that misconception on the part of a lot of adults to the ways that businesses expect, young workers such as yourself to have access to that is a huge concern. If it does pass, it would still have to get all the way through the floor. You have sort of a battle between tech giants that, so Meta is in favor of the bill, even though they lied to us in committee someone lied to us in committee, said they weren't being funded by Meta, even though they were. That actually caused me to introduce a bill that would require anyone who stood before the legislature to swear an oath like they do in Congress. Because right now it's just sort of understood that they don't lie, but there have been more and more people lying to us and giving us false information. But in any case, so you have some tech giants like Netflix and Google who are strongly opposed to this bill. So I would think that it would be fairly unlikely that it would pass because you also have some of the business entities like the Kansas Chamber and some of the stronger business entity interests in the state that are also against the App Store bill. So again, normally I wouldn't say go Kansas Chamber, but sometimes the enemy of my enemy is my friend. When it comes to bad legislation. And so in this case, I've been aligned with them a terrifying amount. No, but I will say part of the reason is that you have a Republican Party that has always been divided through the more libertarian and business side versus the social conservative authoritarian side. And you're watching that battle play out. And, I'm a Democrat. I don't like either one. But if I got to pick one, I'm going with the libertarian business side because authoritarianism is dangerous for all of us. And it also happens to be bad for businesses' bottom line. So it's interesting to see that play out. But I think at least currently we're seeing the libertarian side of the Republican Party, at least in Kansas, winning over the authoritarian side. So fingers crossed. I would be surprised basically if the App Store bill made it, but that cell phone ban bill, it's happening because I don't know what's her deal is, but it's happening.
I also want to note the irony that they are talking about children's mental health consistently with these particular bills while defunding the mental health intervention teams and everything else. $16 million. But we're so concerned about children's mental health that we want to take away their access to their phones, which, might I add, is not necessarily detrimental to mental health. It helps kids stay connected. You get things done. You can access apps that'll help you with your mental health. It's absolutely ridiculous. And as someone who is a mental health professional, I've been like, this is the stupidest thing that you could possibly imagine to do to address children's mental health needs. Obviously, we should be doing more. We should not be defunding it by $16 million. But here we are. Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your question. One of my favorite things is when our young adults show up and speak up, and that's really awesome. Thank you for being here. And one thing I will tell you is that there is a group that has just recently published some more deep dive, thoughtful information into the cell phone ban bill, and the question about whether the governor might veto this particular version of it or not, because there are things that were added that could be in conflict with federal law about IEPs. It could literally keep our journalism and media courses from happening. I mean, you've got to know how to use the apps. It's part of being a social media person. It's the job of being a social media, whether it's a developer, an influencer, our own people hire social media folks. So when we take that educational opportunity away from you in high school and you have to go to college somewhere and can't do the journalism media piece of it, that's a big deal. So one of the things that could happen, with any luck at all, is that if the governor goes ahead and signs it and doesn't veto it, we might have a trailer, what we call a trailer bill, maybe in the next session where we could address some of these issues and concerns. And I would absolutely invite you and encourage you, if we see something like that next year, please testify. And that sounds crazy and a little bit scary, but some of our most effective folks that testify in front of our committees are our young folks who bring their ideas. And so if there's something like that and you would like to testify, reach out to any of us. I'm not sure who your actual representative is, but reach out and we'll get you set up and teach you how to testify so that you can make your voice heard in front of the whole committee that's considering it.
Thank you.
Right?
Okay, I'm going to take the last cell phone word because that's what I'm going to do. And then we're going to hand off to Jennifer Day. And I know some of my colleagues are trying to get out of town before the storm hits to get back to Topeka. So if you see people leaving, no, they're trying to get back to work and also manage jobs and other things. But everybody's very reachable. So on that cell phone ban, I've heard it discussed that the only people pushing this are people who sell yonder bags. And I will say from personal experience, I have a piano parent who is a child psychologist who has been big on the screensavers movement. She makes no money off of this. Some of these people are actually very well intentioned. Now, the data does conflict about this. So I would not speak badly of the people I know from Johnson County that have pushed this, but I have told them from day one, and I will go to my grave on this one, I will never support a bill that would not enable my constituents to reach out to their children in a gun emergency or enable those children to reach out to their parents and potentially say goodbye. It will never happen on my watch that I will support this. Shawnee Mission South had a gun incident last year. My neighbor, it was her kid. And, she's like, I don't know how long it took, but it was a very long time, so I knew things were fine. Olathe East had a shooting. Olathe East had a bomb scare right before that. I'm the adult in charge for my honorary niece and nephew, and here I am texting them, are you okay? Are you okay? Is everything all right? Where should I come pick you up? These are real things that our youth deal with every day, and until we pass a gun law of any sort in this state that actually protects our children, then I expect to continue to hear from moms across my district and across the state speaking out against this. And I would encourage you, if you have one of these stories, to share it with the governor's office, because I feel like they should be carrying this burden. We are losing sleep over this. And I feel like some of her staffers, and she could also. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our former colleague, Jennifer Day, who is running for Secretary of State.
I don't know where y'all want me, so I'm gonna be in the way. Bye, Stephanie, or Representative Clayton. Again, I don't want to be, in the wrong place, so y'all tell me where I need to be. Hi, I'm Jennifer Day. It's nice to see everybody here. I know that we do have a weird weather day today, so I wasn't sure what to expect, but we're working through it because that's what we do as Kansans, right? We're so used to the funky weather. Just a little bit about me. Like they said, I'm a former representative. I am a real estate investor and interior design small business owner. That's what takes up part of my time, but the majority of my time is spent dealing with politics. I've been very involved with the county party for the Dems for many years, as well as volunteering to be an election worker since 2018. And that has fired up a passion in me for our elections process here in the state of Kansas, which I certainly appreciate. I don't know how many people here have worked elections, but I've learned so much. I love it. I've learned so much over the years as a worker about our elections process in the state. And as things have become more and more attacky across the United States when it comes to elections and who can and cannot vote, I certainly have appreciated what it is that we do here in Kansas to protect our voting rights and to maintain that accuracy, but at the same time the access that we all deserve as eligible voters here in the state of Kansas. So it's been since 2019 that I started getting involved in being a precinct committee person, going out knocking doors. 2018 I was doing it for campaigns, but 2019 was when I took on that task of going to doors and talking to people about what was going to be on their ballot, but also finding out what their plan was to vote. And that's where I like to start with things. This is a nonpartisan, non-political office to me. And while I have worked in more of a partisan manner over the last few years, obviously as an election worker, we are not partisan. We are there helping everyone who comes through our door to vote. And that's what I want to continue to have happen in the Secretary of State's office. And I've appreciated the development that's happened over the last 7 years, almost 8 years now, since we got Chris Kobach out of office, who was kind of trying to tear down our rights here in the state. The modernization that has come to the office, the processes and procedures, and trying to tweak laws to make sure that they are servicing our voters well. There's been a battle there, right, with the legislature. And in 2020, I think that was when Pat Proctor was first elected as well. He has been in charge of the Elections Committee since 2021, I think. But has never worked an election. And I really think that it's incumbent upon these people to learn how our processes work a little bit better before they're actually put in charge of a committee that is making laws, impacting everything having to do with our elections processes. But who am I to make that decision? So I'm working hard to get out across the state, meet with voters, meet with county clerks, any one of them that'll take the time out of their schedule to meet with me. I certainly appreciate it. And so far I'm at number 7, and I've got 8 and 9 coming up over the next couple of months. There are 105 counties in Kansas, and they probably all process their elections 105 different ways. So I'm learning how that works, how we can make that better for them, and maybe homogenize the process and make it more standard across the state if that's even possible. Because we are a bottom-up state when it comes to our elections processes, which means the Secretary of State is, running and making sure that our voter roll is kept in play and up to date. But basically, the county clerks are the ones who are in charge of deciding how those processes should be run according to our state statutes. And so they all kind of decided on their own over the last many, many years, decades, how it is that it works best for their county. And frankly, Johnson County does things differently because we have different money in our bank than, say, Labette County or Allen County does in southeast Kansas, or Ford County out in southwest Kansas. So that's a big problem with trying to make things a little bit more even Steven across the board. And a big thing for me is that voter education aspect. I spoke to a gentleman the other day who said and I knew this was going to be a worry, and I want to address this in newsletters. I think a lot of people don't realize this is a position that you're going to be voting for on your ballot. I think some people think it's appointed by either the legislature or the governor. And so we have to make sure people understand that this is a position that is going to be someone they're going to vote for. And so they need to learn who it is that's going to be in that office. Because especially this year, 2027 is going to be a big deal just because we're dealing with voter roll management software contracts. So we need to make sure we have someone good in place who understands and wants to make sure that contract is well servicing. But 2028 is a presidential election year. And if we have someone at the federal level who has already run his route and decides he wants to try to run again, who do we want in charge in Kansas? Someone who's going to push back against that and say, nope, can't be on our ballot here in Kansas, or someone who's going to capitulate and give in. And so that's I'm fighting real hard against that kind of thing, making sure that our voters understand why it is that that's not allowed. We do have the constitutional amendment that's coming up in August is an important one. I do want to mention too, we have another one in November that impacts, it says that you need to be a citizen of the United States in order to vote in Kansas. Our Constitution already says that. And I am still kind of flummoxed over trying to figure out why it is that the legislature, because you need 2/3 majority in order to get that kind of constitutional amendment onto your ballot. How they got 2/3 of the legislature to vote for something like that. I think it's because there's two sections in our Constitution. One is for elections, and then the next section is suffrage. And I think they didn't realize the elections section doesn't say anything about it. It's suffrage. I think they didn't know, first of all, what that word means, maybe, but also it's the first section in the suffrage section of our Constitution that says you must be a U.S. citizen in order to be an elector. And it's something that came up in committee. I know that, Heather, were you there that day? Kind of shocking. 3-4 weeks ago, where Pat Proctor had to admit, the chair of the elections committee, he did not realize that it already said in our Constitution that you must be a United States citizen in order to vote in the state of Kansas. Yes.
So that's going to cost our election offices to have that amendment on the ballot that we don't need.
Yeah. It costs time. Obviously it's going to be a fight, for all of us to go out there and inform people about what that means. Because obviously we think, of course, you want to be a U.S. citizen in order to vote, obviously. But anytime, this is how I feel about it. Our Constitution is in a pretty good place. You don't need to change it right now. It's taking away rights really more than anything else, what they're trying to do with any of these votes. So I always say vote no on any constitutional amendments that are coming up, especially the ones that are coming out of a supermajority legislature that is so off balance at this point in time. So now a lot of the things that I want to do will take a change in legislature. So we need to make sure that we reelect people like these fine women who've been here today to answer your questions and share what's happening. But also to change some of the seats across the state and in Johnson County in general, so that we can try to, again, balance that out a little bit, because we have no idea who's going to be in power in 2027. So whatever we can do to make sure that we tell our friends and family what's going on, talk about voting. You don't have to talk about, politics necessarily, but just talk about voting with your friends and family. And please do share with my campaign. We are trying to connect with people, like I said, across the state of Kansas. And so far, it's mostly just been Democrats that have been wanting to meet with me. I love them, but I need to meet with unaffiliated people and moderate Republicans as well, because I think that my message resonates well with a lot of Kansans, and they just need to hear from me, the only person who has experience working elections, a small business owner who has lived in Kansas for 30 years now and just loves this state and wants to take it forward. So I really appreciate you guys giving me some time. And if anybody has any questions, I know there were some questions about voting stuff. I am happy to answer them, but I don't know what kind of time you all have. So.
Go ahead.
How do you actually reach one of my favorite ideas is that Rhino is not an acronym for Republican in name only, it's representative in name only. And how do you reach people who don't realize that the people they're voting for aren't representing them because they're attacking schools, they're attacking the right to vote, they're
Well-
attacking your gender, they're attacking.
Yeah. And these are good questions. It's something that I think about often as well. But, when I consider where I was 10, 15 years ago when it came to voting and my involvement in politics and government in general, I used to say I was ashamed, but I was just a different person. We have different priorities in our lives. So 15 years ago, I was dealing with the death of my father. And, I was trying to figure out how I was going to pay my mortgage. And I had different priorities in my life. So while I was a voter, always been a voter, frankly, around 2000, 2001, I was basically voting, by guessing a lot of the time. And then 9/11 happened. And so I think a lot of us got really patriotic and kind of started paying a little bit more attention to what was happening government locally, but also especially federally. And then things started ebbed and flowed again for me. I lost interest in it, and other things became more important to me, trying to be, upward mobility in my job as best I could, taking care of things. And I think this isn't unusual for the large majority of the electorate. So we have to consider that those conversations, the reason why it's become more important to me is because of the Brownback experiment and how that impacted, my knowledge about what was happening in the state of Kansas. I don't have any children, so public schools weren't necessarily a concern for me, but suddenly I was a small business owner, something that I launched into back in 2012, 2013 was when I started thinking about it. And so finding healthcare was important for me because I was going to be leaving my cushy job at Sprint, comfortable. We had really great healthcare at Sprint. And I needed to find individual plans that were going to cover conditions that I had and things that my ex-husband had. And so that was a really big concern for me. And I realized what it was. I started paying attention to what Kansas meant. Not so much what the president and what was happening at the federal level in my life, but how Kansas was impacting my day-to-day life. And I started coming to these forums. I started coming here. In 2016 and 2017, the League of Women Voters would hold legislative forums, and I started hearing directly from my legislators about what was happening in Topeka. And so I started talking to my friends about it. And I wrote a blog at the time. I started posting it on my blog and putting it on Facebook that I was doing these things. And I called it doing a thing, that I was going to do it, doing another thing. And I would post a picture or whatever it was. I think that if we share that with our friends and family and our acquaintances that we're doing these things, that we're getting out and being involved in this way, it helps to maybe break down those walls and help people realize how important it is. This is an hour and a half out of a day on a Sunday, once a month that we're doing this. And I know I've always really appreciated what it is that these folks are laying on the line to come out and answer questions. So I just wish more people would. And I think that's going to be our main way. We got to talk to each other. We have to connect with folks and try not to make it a divisive situation. We have to, in that talking, we got to listen. We have to hear their perspective as well and be willing to hear that perspective because it's really important. If someone is telling me that it's more important to them to figure out how to put food on the table and to pay their mortgage than it is to worry about who they're going to vote for, that's okay. I want them to vote, but I also want them to vote in an educated manner. So let's talk about why it's hard for them to put the food on the table and to pay their mortgage. What is impacting their day-to-day life in that, right? So it might take a little time, but I think that's what we have to start working to do is hear each other that way. So I appreciate the question. And I know that there was a question too about all the laws and what's keeping us from voting. I don't think that the federal stuff is going to be impacting the state of Kansas. We've got 9 people running for the governor's seat on the Republican side this year. They are not going to be stopping that election for anything because they're not drawing a name out of a hat. They aren't going to say, well, Governor Kelly can stay in that seat. First of all, she doesn't want to. And second of all, it's just not going to happen. So if Donald Trump tries to stop elections across the country because he's afraid of fraud, I think Scott Schwab, who's running for governor, is not going to let that happen. So.
Want to do one more?
Yeah, if there's any other questions.
Or we can talk about one.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys giving me the time. I do have a website is electgenday.com. I have cards in my purse if y'all would like one. I'm happy to hand them out to everybody. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks for the time, you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I'll be closing it out. Thank you everyone for coming out today on this blustery Sunday. Did we schedule our next one for April
It's the first
4th
Saturday, yeah.
at 9:30 a.m. here?
Here.
Okay, excellent. I remembered it all. Okay, yes. So our next town hall will be April 4th at 9:30 a.m. right here. And we would love to see you. Please bring more friends. We will, in better weather, yes, there, hopefully. We will be on a small break at that point, but we will have spent many days on the floor. So I'm sure we will have quite a bit to update you about. But again, thank you all so much for coming out. Visit us again soon. Thanks.